I'm Sabah Qureshi, a student of Year 2 of Bachelor's of Design in Humanizing Technology. On behalf of NMIMS School of Design, I extend a warm welcome to our speaker, Mr. Fabin Rasheed, our director, Professor Manisha Phadke, faculty, and students. Today, at our Design Perspectives, a speaker series, with great pleasure we invite Mr. Fabin Rasheed to educate us on creativity and technology, to broaden our horizons. Since this is a virtual event, we request you to mute your microphones, turn off your videos. However, questions are most welcome. Please type your question in the chat section and we will be taking them at the end. The more you question, the more you explore. Without much further ado, let me introduce Mr. Fabin Rasheed. He is an artist, designer, innovator, technologist who holds several patents and publications in the fields of creativity and technology. He holds a master's degree in design from the Indian Institute of Technology, Hyderabad. His works include artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality, gestures, and generative arts, amongst many other technologies. He has an experience working with innovation laboratories at Xerox Research, Adobe, IIT Guwahati, etc. His works have also been featured in multiple international and national media like Popular Science, Mashable, Slashgear, BuzzFeed, etc. In 2015, he was selected as one of the top 10 innovators from India as a part of the NCSI to present his work. In 2018, he presented his innovative project on animated brushes at the Adobe Max 2018. In 2021, he was selected as one of the top 10 global finalists at the Aurea Awards, honoring excellence in AR and VR entertainment. He is also an artist, council member at the Museum of Crypto Art, and is a member of Board of Studies at MIT ID. Looking forward to an engaging session. Mr. Fabin Rasheed, the virtual stage is all yours.
Sabah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
All right. Thank you so much for the intro, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Manisha, for the invite to take this session. And I see a lot of people have joined, and it's really great to share some of my works and experiences here. So as Sabah has already mentioned, I'm a person who works at the intersection of creativity and technology, and that's largely the whole session about. It's not necessarily sticking to one particular domain. It is around design, it is around art, it is also around using technology for innovative creations. So just to talk about my journey quickly, I started as an electronics engineer by bachelor's. I went into learning programming at Infosys, and I did a software engineering job to begin with, but I quickly got excited about the field of design, and I moved into design, did a master's in design, and I understood how things could work if things could work in the sense of how creativity could be used with all other as an application to all the fields. What really struck me well was not just the purpose of design as creating utility, but also as something to have a creative expression. This could be art, this could be a conversation, this could be poetry, this could be any kind of medium in which you make a creative expression. I kind of translated those skills going forward into some of my works with these labs like Xerox and Adobe. And I have been leveraging those skills, tying them up to make innovations and trying to see if that could fit with some of the products and some of the products of the companies. So I would like to, have this session as a very interactive session. I am a show and tell kind of a person. I would be showing some of my works, and you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about, what all these words are about. Yeah, once all I want to say is that although we have questions by the end, we also, I highly encourage anybody to just raise your hands and ask a question in between. I don't mind stopping and answering it. So without further ado, I will start by sharing my screen. All right. Can you see my screen? Just can someone confirm?
Yes. We can see your screen.
All right, thank you so much. Um, so creativity and technology. Now, this think of it as two areas where you can apply the combination of creativity and technology. One would be the product area. You're working for a company, you're designing the products. You can think of how creativity and technology could merge together in that particular section. The other section is creative expression in terms of art, or as I said, uh, poetry or some kind of an expression of those lines. Now that is the other section. So I have examples in both sections. I'll start by showing some of the art explorations, and then I'll move into showing some of my design explorations, or more on the lines of a product level company based explorations. So the first part, I am an artist. I moonlight as an artist. I have been recently, or probably a couple of years since I've been working in the area largely of digital art, mixing technology like artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality, blockchain, NFTs, and more. So some of the explorations I did early on was on using generative art as a medium to create for creation, wherein you're not just creating an artwork, but you're creating an artwork with which some other folks can also create something with it. So I'll give you an example. You can also interact with it, and you can understand what I'm trying to say here. So the first project I wanted to share with you is called Regalia. So Regalia is an experiment, is a generative participatory interactive artwork where the art itself is a medium to communicate with the audience. So the audience can create these mandala-like paintings with this tool, and the features of this particular art could be controlled by others, like the brush size with which you paint, the color palette with which you paint. All this is controlled by the people who collect the artwork. So you have collectors on one side, you have audience on one side, you have me as a creator on the other side. So the whole purpose is to bring the whole community together towards one work. And I'll show you, I'll send this link. All of you can open this up, open this link. Um, okay, let me just figure out how do I send a message. Yeah, chat. Sorry. All right. Yeah, can I do everybody see that?
Yes, sir, we can.
All right. Just open up the link and you can see the black area. Just start drawing there. Just start, scribbling in whichever passion you choose, and suddenly it just creates this very meditative experience where in which you're just drawing figures and you're making this mandala without any, having this professional skill for painting or drawing, etc. So take a moment for you to work with the artwork. So again, this work is created using code only. This is created using a library called P5JS processing, a tool called processing, and this creates these generative versions. Which again, as I said, since this was created for the purpose of having it as an NFT, which is essentially a token which helps you sell a digital art. When you're creating such a token, there are collectors who collect these artwork. The unique thing about this artwork is that people could interactively change, the collectors could interactively change the set parameters which I said about. And I as an artist or I as an audience can always draw on it without that, with the particular brush strokes and settings. And if you click on community creations, you will see some of the creations by the community, and you can always download your creation and keep it. All right. I'll also move on to the next work. Next work is called Chromology. Chromology is also a fun play of paint. It is essentially a generative way of painting on without again having skill sets or thinking much about it, just drawing on the surface and enjoying. It's a play of colors. You can just swipe on the surface of the screen and you can see how color drips down based on the palette which is selected, and different palettes could be selected, and different settings could be changed, and different creations. So I know there are these parallels in some of the drawing tools for these things, but again, creating this as a tool and having a conversation with the community around this, now that is something which I try to bring to these books. Yeah, just try it out. I'll pause a moment for that also. All right. So that's a quick start with some interactive work, and I hope you all had a chance to try it out. So that's the thing, right? We are the importance of these creations is to have that conversations, that narrative with the audience, with the people who are enjoying the work, and that's largely what I'm trying to have here. Um, Again, feel free to stop me anytime and ask any questions. Besides this interactive work, I have few other works which I want to showcase to you to show the possibilities of using artificial intelligence or AR, VR, etc., as creating digital creations. So this is generative art. Now let me move on to something on the lines of artificial intelligence. So this project I did in 2018, late 2018, 2019, with one of my machine learning programmer friends. This project was called Aurea Kathy. It's essentially a play with the words AI haiku art. So Aurea Kathy is essentially an artificial intelligence based bot which creates AI generated paintings and a poetry or a haiku and posts it to social media for 1 year. Now, this was in 2018, and this was the beginning of GAN based art, which was coming out at that time. And we tried to make this automated system by which it creates all these, poetry out of it. And based on those poetry, create an image and post it to social media. We also gave it a name and a face which did not exist. So let me quickly. Uh, um, yeah. Uh, So yeah, this project, if you go to instagram.com/audio, I just have to log in. I don't think I have logged in. Uh, oh yeah, it's it. Yeah, you can see how the artist, the AI artist, posts one image for 365 days through the year 2019, and it's stopped after that. It has poetry associated with it, some of which turned out to be gibberish, some of which turned out to be very profound, some of which also bad words, or we had to filter it out. We had to automate the whole process such that we don't interfere with it, and it kept on creating these things every day and posting it. So that was one application of how I used artificial intelligence or GANs, generative adversary networks, to create these works and post it. This particular work was exhibited at the Florence Biennale in 2019 in Italy. And ever since then, I've been working with a few other artificial creations. Latest works right now, and so one of my latest work was called Alapura, which is essentially a work about my hometown of the same name. So Alapura is a, a town in southern India in Kerala, which has beaches, backwaters, and fields, etc. So my purpose of creating this generative art was to show my relation to the place, and I wanted to bring it out in an illustrative format. uh, I had one thing in mind, that I wanted to create it completely out of code. I don't want to use any drawing softwares, any SVGs, or any animation software for this. And I used generative art as such, full code based art to create this work. This artwork was also a live generative art in the sense that it changed based on the location. the time of the day, the weather, the seasons, and more. So it's essentially an artwork which responds to the environment. So this is kind of the main part of the art. It's the beach which I pictured with animations, several algorithms like noise, flow fields, sorry, vector fields, and fractals. All these algorithms were used to create all these imagery out of it. And what you can see is there are these 5 locations in Alapura. So these locations have a separate beach associated with it. In the city of Alapura you are, these images will show. So if you are in beach, the beach will show up. If you're near the lighthouse will show up. Similarly for the lake fields and other places. And again, based on the time of the day, the color palette changes. So in the morning you have a different color palette. In the afternoon, in the dusk time, you have another color palette. When the sun sets, it's really beautiful at that time. And then at night there is another color palette. This was really unique in the sense that I've tied up live weather data. So if it actually rained in Alapura, it rained inside the artwork also. So that way I'm tying the physical with the digital in here. There is also these unique thing about this work that there are a lot of these small features like the birds, the light, everything, and the animated features. All of this was dynamic in the sense that every time you load this image, a different variation shows up every time. Yeah. And all this was created using a file size of just 38 KB. You know how images could be at least 50 to 100 KB if it is a JPG format. But all this was created out of code. No SVGs or any other image drawings were created. So you can read more about that project in the link shown here, and you can also interact with a couple of the demos there. I'm not pausing here because I'll showcase some of the other projects also. All right. This project was called Pilgrimage. Pilgrimage was a project which was a location-based augmented reality project. Location-based augmented reality project in 2020, we have the most common one was Pokemon Go, of course. Uh, uh, the unique thing here was that I sculpted these 9 3D models uh, with a backstory, and I sculpted it using a software called Blender. And I used these 3D models using code to locate them at 9 locations around the world. So these locations included the Museum of Modern Art, the Louvre, the Hagia Sophia, Jantar Mantar, Todaiji Temple. So it's Turkey, France, Japan, USA, all around the world. And this again was an NFT project. So the intent was, so let me just show you how the figurines look like. So these were how the figurines look like. They had different poses based on dance poses and many other gestures. This is how I went through the design process of creating it. I sketched it down, found out which is the kind of form that resonated with me, and I brought it out to Blender, the free 3D software, and I sculpted it base up. And I had to do a little bit of refinement to bring it out into a code renderable AR format. Once these were deployed at 9 locations around the world, I made this commitment that anyone who visits this particular place and views this work in augmented reality and shares a video of it will get the NFT of that particular 3D artwork for free. And I never expected anyone to travel, especially at the time like the pandemic time, to travel and collect these work. So what happened was within a few weeks of release, all the 9 NFTs were collected. People were talking to friends of friends all around the world and communicating and traveling to collect this within their countries. I'll show you the videos of some of these. The first one is in front of the Christ the Redeemer statue, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. The second one is in Hagia Sophia, Istanbul. And the third one is in, I'm sorry, and the third one is in Jantar Mantar, India. So you can see how we mix the creative expression with some of these technology like AR, and bring it out for communicating it with people and having an interactive creative expression out of it. So again, pilgrimage is now a permanent AR installation. If any of you visit any of these locations and go to the page mentioned inside this page, you can see this artwork. You can post it in AR, take a couple of pics with it. So yeah, so far what I've shown is how creativity and technology could be used for art and creations. I'll quickly now, before moving into the next few projects, which is the other section which I mentioned about, product, and how we can use it for different, creating different products and innovating. Before moving into that, I'll take a pause and see if any of you have any questions, and I can answer that now. All right. Any questions? I just want to confirm you can still hear me. Sabha, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear
Yeah.
you.
All right, all right. No,
I
yeah,
don't
please
think
go
we
ahead.
have any questions as of now. They'll be putting it in the chat by the end.
Sure, sounds good. Yeah, it's just that I have a really bad internet connection here, so just in case if my voice breaks out, just let me know. All right.
Yes, sir,
Thank
sure.
you. Yeah. Um, yeah. Moving on, I'll talk about how these this particular area could be applied in a product format and when you're working with the company. When I Adobe, I was recruited as a UX designer, and I work with products of Adobe like Photoshop, Rush, etc. But I was fascinated with the whole concept of how creations could be used with some of these technologies, and there was this new lab forming in Adobe India called the Design Lab, and I moved into the Design Lab, and I found with the team there, I found out which are the areas which we can focus on. So during my first year there, I was focusing largely on AR and VR, and some of my creations explored how Adobe has what are the future of these, using kind of background we have in terms of design and technology. What are the future of these products? So the next two explorations, this first exploration, something for a younger generation to create block-based 3D models for children and to put it up in AR and play with it. So I'll show the video of it quickly. So here you can see how you can, you build this product which can be interacted with. You have these gestures which you need to design such that it is easy for younger audience to interact with in a tablet format. The kind of interface that goes with it, and how you could have these simple materials or paint colors that can be used to paint the model, and then put it up in augmented reality with this actions to play in the real world. So you can see how eventually I put it up in the real world and interact with it, and something happens to it. So this is another example of the lab kind of exploration. I also have another one. This was perhaps the first augmented reality based sculpting experience for tablets. So sorry, you can see how I use the Apple Pencil to sculpt. So we were trying to see how would it be the experience if we use Apple Pencil, not just for drawing, but to sculpt 3D models in air, in augmented reality, and move around the model and sculpt from different angles, paint it live, pose it with the models, refer it, etc. So that was kind of the exploration here. And we also tried to make a virtual reality version of this also, and to see how sculpting in VR looks like. All right. Moving on, I'll talk about one of my major projects at Adobe, and this probably would be the last project that I will be showcasing. And during questions, I can pull up some other projects and showcase. So this project is called Project Kinetic, was an exploration towards animation, and we were trying to figure out what is the future of some of the animation products of Adobe, and we were trying to see if we can bring in short form animation for creating these works. And some of the works included exploring different designs, UX design, workflow designs, and everything, iterating with a lot of users and getting feedback from them, changing it, again going to different users, internal and external, and finding out what exactly works for them in terms of animation and what doesn't. The fun thing is when you reach a company, you will not be working just in a silo where you have this whole product which you will be working on yourself, but you will be collaborating with a lot of teams. So for this project, I had collaborated with the research team, the product team, the engineering research team, the design team, of course. And once you work with these teams, you'll see the best of the best skills from each of them, which could mold one of your products, one of your projects, and get shape to it. So this is how this particular project. This was almost a 7-8 months project, which evolved into something which was translated into a product later on. Um, and one particular portion of that, called animated brushes, was a prototype which I did for fun, essentially to explore something. But that turned out to be one of the key innovations of this projects, and it's just as simple as drawing animations on a canvas rather than drawing one by one, keyframing and animating. And I exhibited this at I was able to showcase this at Adobe Max 2018. This video is available online. You can check it out. Just search for Brush Bounty. But I'll showcase what I am talking about here. So essentially, if you have to draw an animation like a rainfall onto an image like this, what you do is you make all these illustrations and then you add keyframes one by one and then animate it. And this becomes a very tedious process when you have to animate a lot of things, a lot of images and everything. So that is where this particular innovation comes in, where you can, the similar way how you have digital brushes for Photoshop and you paint with these digital brushes, you can use these animated brushes and just draw on the canvas as you like. And it's already animated. You can see it's already animated. And once the animation is done, you can go further into of refining these animations. Like, you can change the rain density, the rain speed, wind direction, etc., etc., etc. So essentially, it becomes an interactive kind of a work which you can change. There's also this concept of how sound will change based on the rain density. Like if it's heavy rain, there's also the sound which plays. So it's not just a static image; it becomes an dynamic, interactive work. Moving forward, I to demonstrate a couple of other animation brushes, and then I essentially end up in this particular area, which was again something which I showcased before, which is it changes with, let me stop here. It changes based on the rainfall of different locations. So wherever you are, again, as I said for Alapura, the artwork changes based on the weather of the place, based on the time of the day, things change in the artwork. And also I went into pushing it a little more, saying, what if someone tweets something. So my friend Paul had kept on tweeting, and you can see as the tweets come in, something dynamic happens in the artwork. So yeah, that's largely about how my journey in mixing creativity and technology in different sectors of design and innovation. So I'll probably, rather than talking a lot about this, I'll take a pause. So I'll wait for questions, and if you have questions, I can showcase with examples and answer them. So feel free to ask any questions in the chat. Anything, it can be about these works, it can be about my journey, it can be about the applications, or what are the career prospects of these journey, of these things. Please feel free to ask these. Yeah, I'll take a pause. Hi, Anaya.
Hi. Can I just ask my question? Or do you should I put on the chat?
You can ask. You can go ahead and ask.
Okay. So you mentioned the blog project for kids that you worked with.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just curious about what were the kinds of challenges that you faced when designing in AR for kids.
Yeah, that is really interesting. So what I did was to actually, iterate with this with some of my relatives, some of the younger folks in my own family and my friends' families. So what I
Right.
did was, every time I created something, I just went and showcased it to them and see, play with it. I didn't tell them to do a particular task. I'm sorry, am I audible?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Your voice is breaking a little bit, but it's for the most part
Okay, can you
understandable.
hear me now?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Yeah, so what I did was I was iteratively, I just didn't give them a particular task to do, but I wanted to see how they play with it. And that led me into a lot more discoveries on what they are looking at, one particular thing, one amazing thing was, you can click on these models and create, but how long will you create it? You can create a large model, you can create an immensely large model which doesn't fit in the screen. Now what would happen then? I never, when I started off, imagined such a thing, but my friend's child went on to create something which would look like a tower, and he could place it in the room, and he can look how tall will it hit the roof, or will it hit the see above the ceiling or anything like that. So that was
Yeah.
fun to see. Specifically in augmented reality, with the technology at that time, they had difficulty in placing the object, especially in finding out a surface. AR technology at that time, and even to an extent now, has problems with reflective surfaces, has problems with uneven surfaces.
Right.
Um, so that was a little bit difficult, and that was something I really need to consider. And there was a trade-off in that. But yeah, these are some of the challenges that I was looking at that time. Hope that answers your question.
Right. That's really interesting, and I really like the pilgrimage project too. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Please go ahead and ask if any individual wants to ask any questions. Or you can also drop it in the chat.
Um, I had a question.
Yes, sir.
So, working with digital arts and everything, what do you see? What do you feel would be the future of digital arts in India?
Yeah, that's a very relevant question. So digital art until right now has been something which did not have a lot of exposure, especially in India. Uh, to consider how digital art was sold, I mean, if you're an artist, if your intent is to sell your work, there were mediums like, you will be creating it as an illustration for a company as a client project, or you can always create it as a stock image or something like that, and you can put your illustration up in a stock platform, or you could print it out and sell the prints. But recently, and I'm sure many of you would have heard about the NFT revolution that was happening. NFT, I don't want to go into the details of it, but it's essentially something which will help you sell your digital artwork. And there are, of course, a lot of positives and negatives to it. So I would highly recommend you understand it very well before moving into it if you are planning to. The point is, if since this has come up, a lot of digital artists have a lot of things to share and sell, and there was a medium to sell to not just an Indian audience but to a global audience, and that has opened up a lot of avenues. Especially many of the designers are from a creative background, and they have a lot of experience in illustrations and drawing and many other things. So they found a way to express it through these mediums, And since then, especially in India, a lot of exhibitions have been happening showcasing these digital artworks. A lot of companies have taken interested in some of these platforms and some of these works. So yeah, I think going forward, this would be one of the key areas in which digital art would be expressed outside.
So that was very insightful. Students, and okay. So would you like me to read the question?
Yes, fine.
So you met Nachiket from year one wants to ask. So you mentioned selling NFTs. So I wanted to know how can we start in this direction? Because I have seen random apes being sold for $210,000. Can you also tell your experience with and the future of NFTs?
I'm really sorry. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
All right. Sorry, my connection is a bit unstable here. All right. So to answer your question, so NFT started off as a medium to sell digital art as such. Digital art in the sense the kind of art which you would create for as an artist, having an artistic value. What happened was there was an influx of collectors at a point and a lot of people moved into it, and since the collection experience went into spending a lot of money, and since a lot of such money had flown in, what happened was there was a lot of collectible projects that came in, and these collectible projects are some of which what you mentioned, the apes and everything. So some of them or most of them had no necessarily any artistic value, and it was rather something like you're buying a stock to a company, and for that matter, the Bored Ape Yacht Club or the random apes that you're talking about, it's essentially you're kind of being part of a system, of a community by buying this particular ape. So if you look at NFTs at its present stage, there is art and there is collectibles. And collectibles is what you see most right now, and it's all the happening things and all the noise that you hear. On the other hand, the artworks are, there are a lot of artists still selling these works one-on-ones and multi-editions there. So that's I think that answers the second part of your question. I think your first part of your question is how you can start in this direction. So I would recommend you take your time and read about this space, because it's not the same space it was 2 years back, which used to be a very good community of digital artists. Now it is an exploding community of a lot of investors and a lot of people who are in here for the for the transactions. So I would recommend you take your time and you study this place. There are key things that you have to learn about is, of course, the blockchain, how the technology works, how is this NFT token created, how is it related to the artwork itself. And again, there are a lot of resources out there. There are many Indian communities out there. I would say be part of it and learn from others. You can also ping me in one of the social media platforms, and I can also help you out. The essential thing is do a lot of research before you move into it. I wouldn't recommend jumping into it and just starting off. I would at this stage I would say you take your time, you understand the space. I would understand the space and start with it slowly. Essentially, you in NFTs you can if you're creating an artwork, a digital artwork, maybe an illustration, maybe an animation, maybe a 3D work, you can create an NFT out of it and put it up in one of these platforms. And a collector, if they like it, they will buy it. So that's essentially the TLDR of it, the summary of it. So it really depends on what you create and the kind of collector stays and kind of people who are looking at your work. And it doesn't always mean that whatever you put will sell for $1 million or a lot of money or whatever. It always is just like, how you would sell something in the market. It will take demand and supply, to actually have the metrics equated. So I would definitely suggest you take your time, read about the space, learn about the space, and then move into it. Feel free to help. Feel free to ask me anytime. I can help you out also. All right. Any other questions?
Thank you,
So,
sir.
regarding the applications and software that you use, one of them would be P5JS, is what I'm assuming. But like for others, suppose AR and like other projects that you mentioned, what are the applications and software that you usually use?
Sorry, what are the applications of AR?
And softwares that you use, yes. Not just AR, also just
No, you
no.
wanted to know the names of the softwares?
Yes, yes.
All right, all right. So largely for the AR products, I use Unity, and I also use a lot of ARJS. JavaScript based AR libraries. One, I also use, at least for the pilgrimage project, what I used is something called model viewer. Model viewer is a library by Google which helps you augment works easily, and it's not such a very complicated system. Sorry. I also use a lot of 3JS and P5JS. I sometimes use ML5JS. So 3JS is something which can create web-based 3D models. P5JS is something which I mentioned, you can create 2D and 3D generative art with it. ML5JS is used for machine learning-based creations. I kind of use a combination of these tools. I also use a lot of Adobe tools for static works and other video works. Besides that, yeah, I think these are my major major kits which I use, but there are other softwares also I delve into from time to time. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
All right. So another question that has come up is, we do introduce P5JS and generative art at SOD, and we threw in a bit of ML5 and NFTs as well. But what direction do you see Gen art being extended to? Here's the thing: generative art is now picking up strongly, and there is a lot of use cases for creating variations. And it doesn't have to be in terms of generative art itself. There is a lot of use cases in creative productions. And I think one direction which I see generative art, especially when some of the AR goggles will become prevalent, is that AR and VR for that matter, is that how digital assets could be, I think it's done. Yeah, digital assets could be, tied with some of these environmental data and, change based on that. I also see generative art being uh, published in some of the platforms, NFT platforms, not necessarily the kind of art which you see, like, different variations of apes, etc., but code-based live art, which is based out of certain algorithms, certain functions, certain instructions, which will play out. And I also see how generative art in the digital format being tied to physical works. And this could be installations. This will be, some of the sensors in your watches and phones, etc. So how these things could connect together, and how you could express with them. So I think these are few areas which I'm thinking would be the future. So I hope that answers your question. Okay. Any other questions?
Okay, I'll go again. What advice would you give to generative artists, especially in terms of, say, finding their style or finding their voice?
All right, we have 10 more minutes or maybe 5 more minutes. So I can take 1 or 2 more questions. Okay. Curious to know if you've tried painting inside VR. I've tried it. I've tried Tilt Brush in 2017, oh no, 18 or something like that. I've tried it, and it was a really unique experience, and it was a I have a little bit of motion sickness when it comes to using VR headsets, so I tend to not spend a lot of time with it. But yes, I've used it, and I think Tiltbrush has been open source, so you can also create these using these libraries, and you can create some of the ports of that yourself also. So yeah, the next question is, hello sir, since you have worked with both AR and VR, which one according to you is going to advance people in the field of technology and design, especially in India? Okay, this is a tough question because for a longer time, I always believed that augmented reality has an upper hand over virtual reality. And I was always watching for AR for a long time. And until recently, the whole metaverse thing came up, and virtual worlds could be connected, and how people will go into these immersive worlds and talk about it. So I have a feeling both of them will go hand in hand, and there will be again, as I said, the beauty of the world is that everybody has their own different ways of expression, and there is this difference is beautiful. So some of the folks will like to use AR more than VR, and they would be using that as a platform, and there will also be VR application. One thing to notice in the future, this demarcation would probably lessen, because in terms of hardware, AR and VR hardware would be combined together. If the camera makes AR work, and if the camera put a shade, it will be the VR work. So there will be a kind of change. Augmented reality would have a different applications and more. I also see virtual reality being used for games and other media right now. So I would say both of them have equal weightage in the scenario right now. All right, that's Sakshi's answer. Tanushree asked, hello, sir. Since virtual reality is an overlay of the actual world, can it be misused, and how can we as designers prevent it? Good question there, Tanushree. I probably would. I mean, this is such an important factor when it comes to designing for virtual reality, and I can talk about it that by one example which recently happened, and this was where a particular person was in a virtual world, and there were other people who came and used virtual devices to actually touch this person inappropriately. And to prevent such things, there was a particular design element that was brought up, which was having a demarcated space for a particular 3D avatar. So this made sure that the reach of each person beyond a barrier, beyond a limit, is disabled, or it could be user controlled. So these are kind of some of the real world and actually happening problems right now. Virtual reality also has misuse. I mean, I wouldn't say misuse, but there is also problems like how I talked about my motion sickness. There are also other problems like how will we use it for people who have vision problems, like lesser vision in one eye, different vision, so those kind of things. Also, how would gestures play out in physical spaces? You're interacting different people and other uh, things or obstructions around it. How do we design for that? So there are a lot of factors which comes into play when you design for it, and it's a very, very fresh field. It's a very unique field to think about how you can design for these things, and there's a lot of perspectives that come out of it. One thing I always try to say is, you can think of yourself as wearing virtual reality glasses in real life without the actual thing, and you can sorry, this is for AR especially. You can think of augmenting things around your space and see how imagine basically augmenting things around your space and see how what would happen if this hits me, or what would happen if another person walks into the room at that time. So those kind of things is what is interesting. All right, I hope that answered your question, Tanushree. And I'll go to the next question. Susega Sdesh, hello, this is Sidesh. I have a question. How do you look at prints, especially in screen prints, as it is now in trend and many artists moving towards experimenting and applications? Um, I am not someone who is experienced with a lot of print. I'll be honest with you. I've always been working with digital. Um, Moving forward in terms of print, again, the whole thing is that if you ask me a question, I suddenly relate it to the digital world. I've been investing time into finding out what kind of digital frames, for that matter, could be used to display works, in what format and what shapes and sizes could be there. I see print being a huge, huge. It has a huge application in the future, in the sense that there is the capacity to augment things on top of it, and at least for the near future, that won't change until location-based precise things come up. So imagine augmenting some of your print works with a lot of digital artworks. There are these apps like Artivai, etc., which could be used for that. Um, and in generative arts, there are a lot of generative artists who actually sell their works through prints, and they do a lot of proof, and they actually print out different variations of it in different formats and sell it. Um, where else have I seen prints being used? Of course, accessories. But again, this is somewhere I don't have much experience in, and I don't want to mislead you there. So these are the areas of application that I know about. If it is about digital frames, I can explain. That's just about the question. And I think we are out of time. Should wrap this up, Saba, or should we have another question?
Yes, I think we have one more question. I'll just read it out. Dwani Patel says, "Hello, sir. Which project has been the most challenging for you when designing for you AR/VR projects? What takeaways would you like to pass on?"
Okay. I think the most challenging project was, of course, the one which I designed for and created for children, the block crafting app. And that was largely because of the technical challenges of designing for 3D with the 2D interface. So how do we translate 2D movements, swiping left and right, into a 3D rotation or a magnification? And how can we add all these, which is rotation, zoom, and panning, all of these into simple gestures? That was a very tough challenge, and that was also a technical challenge in terms of how do I translate these gestures and make it easy for children to interact with it, being their own when they have their own ways of interacting. So I think that was the most challenging project which I worked on in AR/VR, and the takeaways especially would be I dived into the project directly, and I was iterating on the go, having also had experiences previously with working with gestures. But I would always do a little bit more research on how gestures for touch surfaces work out, and how can that be translated into the equivalent 3D version, and the mental models that associate these two things together. So that is a study I would recommend doing before actually moving into projects like this. So I think that was one of the key takeaway, and the other takeaway was also working with children and how they would be using a device. There is a lot of learning that comes out of it, especially how creative they can get, which is beyond your thinking. They could use these tools to and manipulate it in different ways, which could result in a bug being shown to all the way to your design breaking. So those are interesting things to learn from that. Yeah, I think that is just about it.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, I think that's all the questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Fabin, for giving us a brief on creativity and technology. We were all intrigued by the new possibilities of digital art using various different technologies, and to know how to incorporate physical changes into digital art. On behalf of the NMIMS School of Design, we would like to take back a memory. I now invite Professor Jason Mehta.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you for that session. That was rather enlightening. I'm sure the students as well as the faculty have found it very interesting. And we hope to continue these discussions in our everyday life at the school, as well as since you so kindly invited us to interact with you on social media there as well. On behalf of our director, Manisha Fatke, as well as the faculty, and most importantly, the students, I thank you for this session and your time. We have a tradition of taking a picture with our speakers. In pre-lockdown times, we had it in our foyer, but I guess in the lockdown times, we are just doing screenshots. So can everyone turn on the cameras and we'll have a screenshot. Sabha, will you do the honors?
Yes, sir. Could everyone please switch on their videos? Yes, done.
Thank you.
I wish you all a pleasant evening and that you carry with you the wonderful learnings from Sir. Thank you for being a great audience. Take care and stay safe. I hope to see you all in the next speaker session.